Come see us on tour. We're going to be in Bakersfield, San Jose, California, Buffalo, New York, Toledo, Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, Glasgow, Manchester, Belfast, Dublin, Liverpool, Birmingham, and London. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. Our special guest is with us, Neil Oliver, Scottish archaeologist, historian, broadcaster, writer. He's perhaps best known for the award-winning documentary series Coast, as well as his two critically acclaimed landmark BBC's history series, A History of Scotland and A History of Ancient Britain. Neil has written 14 books, presented 19 series for national broadcasters, recorded 2 major podcast series, hosts a live show on GBN News, and broadcasts weekly on his online channel. Please welcome back to the show, Neil Oliver. Hey, Neil, how are you?
I'm well. I love hearing an introduction like that, Jimmy. Makes me sound ever so busy and clever.
Wow, you sound very accomplished. So
I do.
What was the now? I'm going to be in Glasgow on the 11th of June, so I'm looking forward to doing stand-up comedy there, and I'm glad you're going to make it out to the show. I'm very flattered. You're taking time. And what was that? How did you describe Glasgow just now? You used a saying.
Nature red in tooth and claw. It's a proper city. I went to university. My family are all from Glasgow. On my mum's side, on my dad's side. I went to university in Glasgow. It's a fantastic city, but it's got it all going on. We proudly say in Scotland that it was the second city of the empire, being the British Empire. It was, it's where at one point the vast majority of the world's shipping came out of the Clyde shipbuilding yards in Glasgow. It's a legendary place, and if you've never been there before, it's a 5-dimensional, all-sensory experience. It's a fantastic place.
Oh, well, I'm looking forward to it.
You'll love it.
My brother married someone from Scotland, so he got married in a kilt. And
these things happen.
The whole deal.
What can I say?
Well, I wanted to talk to you about this because we didn't cover it, and this is a perfect time to cover it. This is from April 16th. The UK Supreme Court rules legal definition of a woman is based on biological sex. It came about after the Scottish government included transgender women in quotas to ensure gender balance on public sector boards. Campaign group for Women Scotland argued that sex-based protections should only apply to people born female, and the UK Supreme Court agreed. They ruled that the legal definition of a woman is based on biological sex. Judges say the concept...
How radical, how very dare they?
So, no kidding. So the judges say the concept of sex is binary, while cautioning that the landmark ruling should not be seen as a victory of one side over another. Oh, I think it is.
I think it absolutely is.
Transgender people still have legal protections from discrimination, the court adds. One more. The Scottish government had argued that transgender people with a gender recognition certificate, a GRC, are entitled to sex-based protections, while For Women Scotland argued they only apply to people that are born female. For Women Scotland says it's grateful for the decision after a long road of legal battle, while Charities Scottish Trans urges people not to panic. The Scottish government says it acted in good faith and will work with Westminster to understand. So what is going on in Scotland that the UK had to come in and overrule Scotland?
The government, the regime in Scotland has been measurably insane for decades now. Under the guidance of the SNP, the Scottish National Party, not so very long ago, there was a Named Persons Act that was attempted, whereby every child would have a nominated named person, which their families wouldn't necessarily know about. And each child would have been encouraged to have a relationship, a kind of confidential relationship with that named person, having conversations and confiding and telling things and reporting information that the parents would not be privy to. And this was protested and challenged and went all the way to the Supreme Court and was kicked into the long grass. It's probably still out there somewhere in the fantasies of some individuals within the Scottish regime, but for the time being, that was kicked out. And so in that context, it's not as surprising as it might be to sane people around the world that the later development was this idea of self identification. That all a person needed to do in Scotland was to declare that they are a woman, and that would have been a legal fact. That would have been, that was all you needed to do, was just to say just sign a bit of paper declaring your gender. So long story short, this has eventually come down to this ruling in the UK Supreme Court, which is, surprise, surprise, it's come down and decided that only women are women, and men are only men. But I for one was not really waiting for a court or anybody else to tell me what a woman actually is and what the definition of a woman actually might be. I've had a pretty clear idea about what a woman is for most of my life.
It baffles a lot of people who consider themselves on the left. They can't answer that question. Even people who just made it to the Supreme Court here in the United States, when asked what a woman was, she said, "I'm not a biologist."
We've got our he was just the leader of the Labour Party at the time, but he's now the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. He found it difficult to answer yes or no a question along the lines of does a woman have a penis? David Lammy, who at the moment is the Foreign Secretary, has previously ducked the question of whether or not a man has a cervix. So there are people at the very highest levels of politics now serving in some of the highest positions in the land who, apart from anything else, are very vague, very mauve when it comes to defining what might be the primary and secondary sexual characteristics of men and women. And they're out there making decisions affecting the lives of nearly 60 million people. It makes the blood run cold in the tribes.
How did this... I mean, I always, growing up, I always looked at Canadians and Europeans as being superior to people in the United States. How did this happen? Do you have any? I'm sure you have some theories on how this happened. Was it a slow creep? Is it white guilt? Oh, I don't know. What is it? What is it?
I think it's where we end up. If you follow hypotheticals to the point of absurdity, I think it all comes that maybe at some point there was a genuine desire to have equality between the sexes, equal opportunities for men and for women, to get away from discrimination on the grounds of race or ethnicity or religion or sexual preference. Now, all of those things are all starting points with which most rational people would be able to make peace and say, yes, these are noble aspirations to treat everyone equally, and that justice, as in the as she's embodied in the statues on the top of the courts in Britain, is blindfolded, doesn't judge based on appearances and all of the rest of it. You can see where it would come from, laudable beginnings, but then it just gets to this point of insanity, which is the point at which we arrived with DEI and ESG and all of these three-letter guidance, all that three-letter guidance that was laid down for us. But there is some kind of insanity. Maybe it started on the left, I wouldn't like to say, but it's metastasized like a kind of cancer, and it's gone everywhere. It's gone into every institution. It's captured all of the universities. It's captured all of the institutions, all of those bodies, the judiciary, everything that was supposed to provide guidance for people in the United Kingdom. And it's been an ongoing, harrowing process of relentless disillusionment. For someone like myself who was really apolitical, if I was anywhere, I suppose I was somewhere in the centre when it came to elections and voting. I always just had to almost kind of make a spur of the moment decision from general election to general election, because I had no faith in politicians as a species. And now that has been just, if that was how I felt 10 years ago, by now, I just don't know what to think. When I'm waking up every morning and I turn on my phone or I look at a news headline, I just don't know what madness to expect next. I mean, we've got £50 million of public money about to be spent in the UK on dimming the impact of the sun. They're going to turn off the sun.
That's, if there's one thing you have too much of over in the UK, it's the sun, huh?
Well, but Jimmy, on the one hand, they've spent the last however long it is smothering the landscape in solar panels,
right,
so that they can turn off the coal-fired power stations and the gas-fired power stations and the nuclear power station. We're going to get all our energy from the sun. And they've spent infinite amounts of public money laying that out across the landscape. And now they're going to turn off the source of the power. We live in a solar system, and they're going to turn down the solar in the UK. I don't. As I say, I get out of bed in the morning. Which side of the looking glass am I on, Alice?
And so they're going to try to block out the sun. And as I say, what could go wrong? What could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong? I mean, I think Scotland ranks about fifth in the world, fifth lowest in the world for the amount of sunshine hours we get in a typical year. It's breathtaking, so that I now find myself in a situation where I think, yeah, well, the fact that we have to have conversations at the highest levels about what a woman actually is, and whether a woman has a penis, whether a man has a cervix, well, that almost pales into insignificance when you're up against people that want to block out the sun.
I'm with you 100%. Let me, my theory was that I saw a videotape of Larry. Why am I blanking on him? The guy who runs Blackwater, Larry Fink. Larry Fink, yeah. And he was bragging about, because there's only a handful of private equity firms that own the controlling shares in most companies in the Western world, and BlackRock's the biggest. And so they basically can give orders to companies and corporations on how to conduct themselves and how to conduct business. And he was bragging about that they were going to force transgender ideology, and they were going to force ESG on companies. And if they didn't, they were going to pay a price. They would have to pay higher money for loans and certain things, like the controlling things like that. So my theory is that this didn't really come from the grassroots. Nobody's for discriminating against transgender people, but to have biological males invade female spaces seems crazy, and that seems like a strategy that came from the top. It came from people like Larry Fink, and that's a way to keep people divided and fighting each other, so we don't come together across class lines and overthrow people like Larry Fink and the oligarchs. So what do you make of that?
To me, Jimmy, it's an anti-human agenda. All of it is a bloody-minded attempt to undermine the very foundations of what it is to be human and alive. We all, you grew before this madness descended upon us. People knew what a woman was, what a man was. We understood ideas like equality, but all of this is being applied. All of this, the trans agenda, all this, equity and inclusion, all this DEI, all these acronyms that I've lost track of. It's a bait and switch. On the one hand, they're presented as though it's for the good of the Commonwealth. It's for the good of it's for the greater good. But 180 degrees, the obverse of that coin is actually the truth. It's to undermine right at the very heart of the family. The fundamental, the basic building block of community and then of society and of civilization itself is the family. The strong, independent family, where the family members trust one another. And all of these are means to undermine, to break those chemical bonds so that people are atomized, so that people don't have anyone upon whom they can depend. They don't have any structures upon which they can lean. The very scaffolding of the family, the scaffolding of society is unbolted and taken apart. So that ultimately people end up just being dots on a spreadsheet, they're commodifying everything. The air that we breathe. The new incoming CEO of the World Economic Forum, is on record as having said that water is not a human right. Access to drinking water is not a right. Water itself is a commodity that is then offered for sale by whoever has put themselves in a position to control its supply. And the objective is simply anti-human. It's to leave all of us feeling that we are entirely alone and at the mercy of these transnational corporate entities like BlackRock that are answerable by law only to their shareholders, and the rest of us are just chaff on the wind.
So I saw this on your Twitter feed. George Galloway tweeted out, Scotland would be better off by far if every single one of these losers, liars, women denying woke wasters disappeared from public life forever. I absolutely am certain that is a Scottish majority view. So who are is this the court that just got overturned?
I'm not quite seeing who that is, but George, it's George Galloway. It's the upper echelon of the Scottish regime, I think.
Okay.
These are the people who've been presiding over the decisions, that affect 5 million Scottish people. And George Galloway, I think you've had George Galloway on your show.
Sure. Yes.
George is one of the people that I've known about George Galloway all my life. He's always been there as a firebrand and a fantastic political orator and all of the rest of it. But I've got to know him personally over the last few years, and it's one of those unexpected relationships, really, because George is a lifelong socialist, and that's not really ever been my political ideology. Not that I ever really had a political ideology, but when it comes right down to it, I agree with George about 90% of everything. He's a man of principle. He's a family man. He's a man of faith. He's grounded in reality. And I quite often find myself, retweeting George's offerings because, as I say, something between 90 and 100% of what George says is right.
So would you say that the majority of the Scottish people don't go along with the elite, those people in that picture?
Well, all the way back in 2014, there was a referendum where the Scottish people were offered the choice of staying within the United Kingdom of Great Britain or becoming an independent entity. And that vote was responded to on a huge scale. It wasn't one of those, lukewarm responses to a plebiscite. It was a massive turnout for that referendum. The decision was 55 to 45 in favour of remaining part of the United Kingdom. And what you're looking at there are the relics of the regime that never got over the fact that the majority of the electorate in Scotland wanted to be part of Britain, rather than being wrenched from the greater family of Britain. And it was in the aftermath of that, as I say, we got the attempted legislation like the Named Persons Act, and then more recently the self-registration that was available to any bearded bloke in a dress that wanted to get access to women's toilets and women's changing rooms.
So I also saw one more thing. I found this very intriguing on your Twitter feed. It said load-bearing myths are collapsing under their own weight, intended or unintended consequence. Could you elaborate on that? Are you referring to something specific?
Yeah, a whole raft of things. I think that the world that I grew up in, uh, into which I came into my maturity, as it were, I took for granted many institutions, many aspects of 20th century history, many ideas that I took for granted as simply being true, and much more recently, on account of what's been happening over the last 3, 4, 5 years since the COVID debacle and all of the rest of it. The climate hoax, the war in Ukraine, the horrifying spectacle of what's been happening in Gaza. It seems to me that I've picked at a thread on a tapestry and pulled at it, and now that whole picture of the world that I previously understood, built on these load-bearing myths, is crumbling under its own weight. And I think a time is coming when so much that many perfectly reasonable people have taken for granted as the truth is going to have to be re-examined, reinvestigated, and a time will come when all sorts of alternative interpretations of history are going to have to be opened up for debate, because the old load-bearing myths just no longer bear even their own weight.
Come see us on tour. We're going to be in Bakersfield, San Jose, California, Buffalo, New York, Toledo, Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, Glasgow, Manchester, Belfast, Dublin, Liverpool, Birmingham, and London. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.